Hello again. This time we're going to cover how to assemble those trimmed reads into contigs using SPAdes. We're going to start out in the Mido_reads directory where I'm already located. So make sure you find that again. This is where you had done the trimming from last time. And you can also do an ls to look at what's inside of here. Note that you're not going to have this because I have this, I went ahead and just pre-assembled this for later. So you'll see the rest of this hopefully. So last time we covered how to trim reads, and our finished product should be these two right here, the paired trimmed reads. So these two files are going to be the inputs for SPAdes. And one thing we can do is we can bring up the SPAdes help. So SPAdes is a Python script, and you can run it from anywhere by calling this. And I'm just using -h for help, although if you give it no commands, it will also give you usage information, but I just figured I'd include that. So we get this that it spits out. There are quite a few options in SPAdes, but I consider it not too overwhelming compared to some of the other programs that we've used. One thing to probably use is this, -t. This is for multi-threading. I think that, the default is 16, so actually that's plenty fine for probably what you need to do. If you're on a computer that doesn't have a lot of cores, and maybe you'd want to ratchet that down a little bit. But otherwise, if you want, you can play around with this. I guess we'll use the defaults, so we won't have to do a -t. But if you really need to add more threads, you can increase them using this. So like if I wanted to use 32 threads, I could have done -t space 32, and that would give me what I want. Memory, this should be fine, especially if you're just dealing with prokaryote data. So this is just allowing you to control how much memory is allowed to be allocated to SPAdes before it decides to terminate. Keep it at the default. I don't think you're going to run into much of an issue. And -k, this is for Kamers. I think the defaults are just fine. This is more for tweaking. So once you get into really needing to tweak your assembly, you might want to start looking up these options. They also have a manual online, which I suggest looking into because they give you more information about how to use these things. One that might pop up is careful, --careful. This is an option you can give to try and reduce the number of mismatches and short indels. So this does significantly increase the time it takes to assemble your genome, but maybe that's okay. Like maybe you have time to spare. I have had okay success with it. It has not always drastically improved my assembly, but it wouldn't hurt to run it on something smaller. And I guess we can just gloss over the rest of these because what we're going to be focusing on right now is using those paired trimmed reads in this assembly. And really the two things you need to, input options that you need to keep in mind are these two. So the -1 is going to designate the file with forward paired end reads. And then the -2 is going to designate the file with reverse paired end reads. Finally, with -o up here, we can specify the directory where we would like to store all of the resulting files. So when the assembly is complete, actually while the assembly is running, we're going to see that folder appear. And this is required. And that's about it really. And I'm going to just go ahead and give this a try, and you can follow along because we're just going to do a really basic run with this. So I'm going to go ahead and just do SPAdes.py -1 autocomplete with those paired, and I'm using the 1 because that's corresponding to the forward, and then -2, and then I'm autocompleting again to that. So these are the -1, -2, so I'm already like halfway there. Something I'd like to point out is that you might get a lot more reads than just a single set, and that's when you're going to have to use that concatenate option, which I had covered before. You're going to want to concatenate them into a single set of forward and a single set of reverse reads if they're coming from the same run in the same sample. You shouldn't mix reads if they're from entirely different things unless you know what you're doing. So make sure they're in that format so you can just do a -1 and -2 here. That's not required. You can have it so that you can specify multiple libraries and have the multiple files, but that's kind of like a pain in the butt, I think. So I would rather just go ahead and concatenate them ahead of time and then do it. Because also it's easier to keep track of trimmatic because when you're going to trim all those reads separately, you're going to have a bazillion files. So it's better just to concatenate them all and just go through it in one go. So anyway, this is all you really need for specifying the inputs, and then of course we need to specify an output. So I guess for this case, I guess it would be new assembly. You could just call it whatever you'd like. I just had to remember not to call it test assembly, which is what I was about to call it. because I don't want it to overwrite this one. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hit enter, and then you're going to see it's going to start working. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, you can hit Control-C right now to back out of this, and then to go up. Let me just clear the screen. So for this toy data set, it's going to finish very quickly, but you might want to use NoHup for any, you should use something like NoHup for any serious assembly. So remember how that works, right? You're going to have that at the beginning, and that's going to make sure that there is no hang-up. So if you were to disconnect or anything, it's still running. In this case, you don't need it, so we can just go ahead and continue forward with this. So I'm just hitting enter again. You'll see this is running through everything. Now, I timed it before, and I think this takes 7 to 8 minutes. So what I would like you to do is to have this finished running and get the results before moving forward. So you should, at this point, just pause the video and finish up on that. I'm just interrupting this. And this is why I have that this right here, the finished one. I'm sorry, yes, this one. Because then we'll be able to see it in real time. So go ahead, finish that, pause this, come back to this video, and then we'll continue. And hopefully by now you're done. So why don't we go ahead and CD into this. This is going to be the finished result. I think it'll be new assembly for you, but I just canceled that early. So go into whatever you named your assembly after it's completed, and now we can see what's inside and do an LS. Now these were the different assemblies at different cameras, and what it does is it sort of optimizes it at the end. And it does this automatically, which is what makes SPAdes fantastic, because we don't have to run through each of these iterations. You really don't have to worry about cameras right now. The default should work just fine for you for the most part. And then what we're really looking for is the finished product, which is right here, contigs.fastday. There are some other things in here like graphs, corrected reads, and parameters. In fact, I would pay attention to these, the parameters.txt and the spades.log. We can even take a look at this. So put it spades.log. I just moored it. You can use less too. This shows you the command that was used to run SPAdes, which is important, and also the version information, like the version of Python, the version of SPAdes, the operating system, etc. So this is very useful for methodology. You should keep track of these things. Put them somewhere that you can look at. I don't know what this holds. Oh, okay, pretty much the same thing, the params.txt. And any warnings you get here, I moored this. Now, the reason I'm getting this warning is because there was a very small data set that I had. So this might not necessarily work out. Or no, that might be a different error. But anyway, so you can check these all out. But I'm just going to focus right now on this right here. This is the contigs.fastday. This is what you're looking to get. We can like less this, for instance. And this should look familiar to you because we did cover this earlier on, different assembly though. But now this should be the assembly of the mitochondrial contigs, and actually only mitochondrial contig. You'll see here it's actually a perfect length, and I find it quite remarkable because we didn't have many reads to start with, but because it's pretty high coverage and we isolated the reads that are just solely mitochondrial, it was pretty easy to reassemble this. And you might get that lucky when you're dealing with eukaryotes to be able to fully assemble a mitochondrion, or you might not. Definitely with bacteria, you're going to have multiple contigs. So don't think it's going to be easy, but at least here's an example where we actually have a fully assembled genome that we can also move forward with Proca. So that's what I'm going to cover next time. I'm going to cover things like Quast and Proca. So just make sure you can get to this point where you have assembled your data. And after you try it out with your toy data set, you can also do it again with the real deal. Just keep in mind it's going to take a lot longer, so you should use something like NoHup.